Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next session in the ML and AI track at PyData Global. We're excited to have you join us. Bit of housekeeping for those who are new to us this session. Feel free to use the chat to connect to fellow attendees and share your thoughts during the session. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A tab, and we'll address them at the end of the session. So with that, now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Michael Allen Washington. They will be giving a talk on build your own personal data warehouse. And let's give Michael a warm welcome. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Michael, to take it away.
Okay. Hi, thank you for having me. So I think I'm sharing my screen. Oops. Nope.
Not quite yet.
There. That's what I should do. Okay. Hi.
Actually, I
Okay.
still don't see it, Michael.
Oh, you still don't see it? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
Give me 1 second there. Okay. Let me
maybe
do
it's
it one more
me.
time. Sorry about that, folks. Stop sharing. Go back here to sharing. Apologize for that. Entire screen. Share. Minimize.
There we go.
Share from beginning. Okay. See my slides now?
Yep, looking good.
Okay,
Take it away.
perfect. Okay, thank you for having me. Hi, I'm here to present. This is an open source project of mine called Personal Data Warehouse. It allows you to use AI to uh, basically have your own personal data warehouse on your computer. And with the AI, it allows you to create the scripts in Python. So that's why I'm here presenting it today. So just from the beginning, this is not a product. I'm not selling anything. This is all open source. Everything is on GitHub. I'll have the links to all the code. So this is just basically an open source project. I'm a Microsoft MVP. And basically, this is what we're going to be talking about today. First, I want to take a moment to talk about data in a way that a lot of people don't think about it. The various modes of data and specifically transformations. And that's really what we're going to talk about. Um, Mostly, you use your transformations with your Python notebooks. Here, we're going to talk about doing those transformations on your local computer using AI to help you. Then we're going to dive into the project that I'm here to share with you, which is the personal data warehouse. We'll go over, what it can do, how you can import data, transform the data, but also we're going to talk about exporting the data and reporting on the data. And this is a feature that a lot of you may not already have tools that you use, or maybe you don't have tools that you're happy with. So that's something to stay, here for to see about. And time permitting, I'll talk about going to a deep dive of how this works, how I'm actually able to process the Python code dynamically and create it dynamically using AI. Okay, so let's first start into and talking about data. The first thing I want to cover is data is not the thing. It always represents a thing. And a lot of times we're so used to looking at data in our databases that we're like, no, data is a thing. I can see it right there. But that data that you see in front of you that you can manipulate is always to represent something else. And the purpose of doing this is because in the end, a human being needs to make some sort of decision based upon that data. So that's the key thing I really want to uh, communicate, which is the purpose of all this manipulation of data that we do is so that the humans can somehow use that information to make some sort of decision. Another thing I want to call out is that data has three forms, three stages. There's the collection stage. We get the data some way, somehow. We collect it into the computer. The next thing is transformation. We always do some sort of transformation. Um, And then the final thing is exporting and reporting. And that is the stage where some human is going to use that information, usually as a result of a transformation, to make some sort of decision. Again, let's look. There's another slide to kind of show this. Looking from left to right, You have the raw data, you get it some way, you import that data. In the middle, you do the transformation, and that's pretty much what we're going to spend the time of this talk talking about is transformations, and then of course reporting. And then finally, you have that actionable insights, and that's where the human is able to, they got this data, they got this report, they're going to do something with it. They're going to make some sort of decision with it. So again, the purpose of data is always to allow humans to make some sort of decision. Just three more slides here where I kind of wanted to back up and kind of say, let's look at a restaurant. We're not looking at the computerization of the restaurant. We're just looking at a restaurant to show you how even a restaurant data is part of it, and it has those three modes. So, for example, collection. The restaurant might have this bowl where people drop in their business card to, be part of a drawing. And the reason why they do that is because now the people are on their mailing list and they can mail them, hey, we have specials or something like that. The restaurant also has inventory levels. The suppliers give them, food and that sort of thing. So they write this down, or they, have sheets of paper, or maybe they do put it in the computer. Um, so there's a collection of data, and that's what I would call the raw collection of data. But let's look at the transformations. So in the kitchen, they could have an order breakdown. So you already have the ingredient. You have, hey, this is what the customers are ordering, and someone kind of has to break that down and go, okay, we're going to use, out of our eggs, we're going to use it for this meal, and we're going to do this. That's what I call a transformation, which is you have the data, um, but now you're going to transform it because you need to do something with it. Um, and it could be something as simple as just task management. The people who are working today, and you want to assign them, certain times. You're making a transformation. And then let's look at exporting and reporting. So the kitchen can have some sort of, hey, we need to reorder this and we need to reorder that. But then also, when the meal is over, the customer is given a bill. That is a report. It's basically saying, look, we had this food come in, we did this transformation, and this is how much money you owe us. And the human then makes a decision on whether or not they agree with the bill and they're going to pay it, or whether or not they want to decide how much money to tip, or maybe they'll dispute it and say, you know what, I didn't order that extra chicken. So that's an example of the reporting. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the personal data warehouse. So with the personal data warehouse, looking at data in this way, I created the application and looking from the bottom to the top, importing data. There's a way to import the data, whether it's through SQL Server, Excel workbooks, CSV files, simple text files. The next thing is the transformation, and that's the big part. Whereas I allow you to do the transformations using either C# or Python, and also you can use AI to help with those transformations. And then finally, but still as important, is the reporting. So I have a full featured reporting engine, and that is something that, again, if you already have something that you're happy with, okay, great. But if you don't, then this might be something that might be interest of, for you. So, personal data warehouse. What this is basically saying is that we're all pretty much familiar with data warehouses. They sit in the cloud. However, I realized that there's a lot of data related tasks that don't really require me to have to use a cloud service. And more importantly, requires me to pay for a cloud service. So I realized that on my computer, I can do the collection, the transformations, and the reporting. So that's why I created this application. To get to the application, there's a number of ways to get to it. There's a GitHub. Um, Again, you don't have to write down that long address. If you go to blazerdata.net, you'll see a link that'll take you to the GitHub. So you can just download the GitHub and run the code. However, if you don't feel like getting to the source code, um, it actually did put in the Microsoft Store. Obviously, it's free. You don't have to pay for it, but you just go and search for it and you could pull it down. If you're familiar with using WinGet, you can actually type WinGet install personal data warehouse and you can pull the application that way. So when you open up the application, as far as setup, while AI is not required, obviously it's extremely helpful and you're going to see how it's used. So what you want to do is go to the settings tab and go to the AI tab, and you'll have an option of configuring either OpenAI if you have an OpenAI key, Azure OpenAI if you have an Azure OpenAI key, or LM Studio, which is actually a free AI tool that you can download onto your local computer, and also Olama. If you have Olama, it'll work with Olama. So LM Studio and Olama actually run on your local computer. So therefore, you don't have to pay OpenAI or Azure OpenAI and still use the AI. Um, as far as database management, again, I say it creates unlimited databases. But when you create a database, all it does is create a folder and puts all the objects into that folder. So a database is just a folder on your computer, and you can go in and see it and move it around and that sort of thing. So let's go through a quick start to show you the standard use of this open source tool. So first thing is you want to create the database. So we go to settings, we go to database management, we click new database, and we're going to create a new database called Acme. Um, it starts off with a default database, and you could put all your objects into that default database. However, if you have a situation where you import, say, a customer table, and then you have another project where you have a customer table, there will be a conflict. So that's why we have the databases, so that you can have separate folders, you can have files that have the same table name, but if they're in different databases, it's okay. So anyway, we're going to create this database called Acme, submit it, and like I said, all that does is create a folder on your computer. And you can actually rename that database, export that database, which zips up the folder. You can import a database, which will import a zipped up folder and unzip it. So, like I said, a database is just a folder. So now we're going to start off with importing the data. This is that collection part. Um, so you can import data from, like I said, SQL Server, Fabric Data Warehouse, um, any sorts of things. But we're going to show the simple one, which is an Excel file. So we're going to click on Tables, click on New, and we're going to choose a file, and we're going to choose an Excel file. And we're going to choose an Excel file called customers. And the reason why we're going to start with customers is there's another one we're going to do next called sales. So we have the customers and the sales, and I'm going to show you how we combine those together. So we're going to select open, and it opens up on the screen, and it's an editable data grid. And you can see all your data, and you can actually edit the data there. But in this case, we're just going to hit save. We're going to save this as customer, and then we're going to do the same process again for sales. So now we have two tables, customers and sales. So now we're going to create a view. This is where you do the transformations. So we go to view, we click new view, the new button, and that's where we have our choice of languages that our transformation will be in. So obviously we're at a Python conference, so we're going to choose Python, but the other option is C#. So we select Python, we click select, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up in this code editor window, um, basically just this default that just really shows nothing here. However, let me just see if my highlighting thing was working there. You see that it does have the import pandas, so you can use just your normal Python stuff. The only difference to note here is that this method must have, well, yeah, this code must have a method called load data, and it must return a data frame. Otherwise, anything can happen inside here that you can normally do in Python. So there's no limitations there other than it has to have this method called load data and has to return the data frame because that's what the framework is expecting. However, you'll see that we have this AI icon. And if we click the AI icon, it allows us to type in a prompt. In this case, we're going to say in the Acme database, join the Acme customers and the Acme sales tables and return the top 10 customers by total sales. And again, select the language Python, we click submit. And this is where the AI is able to, you know, write this code for us. So this is what you get. So the AI wrote all this code here in the middle. And again, you understand Python, you understand this. The thing to call out though is that when we imported the data, even though it was Excel data, the native data format for this application is Parquet. So if you're not familiar with Parquet files, you should definitely want to look it up because this is what all the major data warehouses use. It's a industry standard. So it converts all the data to those Parquet files. So the table was created to a was turned into a customer Parquet file, and the cells was converted to a sales Parquet file. And of course, the paths are noted there. Then built into the framework is um, actually no, this is actually pandas. Um, the point is we can then use read parquet to read from that path into a data frame. So the customers and cells were were read into data frames. Then at this point, it's just standard Python. We, do the merge. Um, we then, get the totals, um, and then we do the grouping. And like I said, at the end, it just needs to return a data frame. So this code is created by AI, obviously, then shows it to you. You can then make changes and edits or whatever and hit save. And then when you hit the run button, so go ahead hit the run button. Obviously, I didn't have it saved with the name yet, so it asked me to save it with the name, top cells. I hit submit, and I hit the run button again, and it'll then show you the data. So you're like, okay, looks good. We can go back to the AI and we can just alter it. So let's say we wanted the top 20 cells rather than the top 10. So we're able to just type that in, alter the script to show the top 20 rather than top 10. We hit submit, and the AI will automatically update that code. And then we hit the run button and we can see it. And now you see at the bottom there, it's pageable. So it's 10 per page. And there you go. So that's kind of the basic flow of the application. You can bring in data. You can then use AI to create the transformations, and there you go. Or again, you can write the transformations yourself manually. So what this is saving you is that if you're used to using, say, Python notebooks, using some cloud service, you can just do it on your own computer and not have to, pay for that cloud service. Let's quickly look at reports. So if you go to the reports and you click the little, basically it's this laser bolt thing, it's a report wizard. And the report wizard allows you to point to any table or view and select it and give it a name, hit submit. And when you hit run, it's going to create a very rudimentary report. You can click the AI button and you can ask it to, for example, increase the width of the customer name column and rename the customer name to customer, and it will then actually update the report. So you can use the AI to update the report. Now, I know this report does not look very good, and I'm going to show you how you can make beautiful reports coming up. But again, you can also, of course, print. So it just rudimentary, bring the data in, you can do a transformation, and you can print it out. I want to just take a couple of slides to talk about the transformations. And whenever you transform data, so we talked about the collection, right? And then we talked about that you want to do some sort of transformation, and then you want to report out. That transformation part, it requires money. It requires CPU. And depending on how complicated the transformation is, that's how much CPU it is, and therefore how much money it is. So with the cloud, whenever you do something in the cloud, um, again, CPU has to be used. Someone's got to pay for it. And the cloud service, whether it's Azure, whether it's AWS, whether it's Google, they're going to make you pay for it. Okay. Um, and while it's worth it or whatever, the key thing about this is I realized that all of our computers, we have actually pretty powerful CPUs. And we don't even need a GPU, we just need CPUs. We have powerful CPUs that are really going unused. So so what this application does is it allows you to use your computer to do those transformations and basically save money, or in some cases, it's just more convenient. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So what this does is it basically empowers you. And that's why I call it the personal data warehouse. And I then shoved in AI because AI is in everything. But then it was important that you can use AI free using LM Studio or Olama. And, so therefore it is possible to run everything completely offline with no costs to any outside service. Um, this AI is actually capable of doing some pretty advanced things. So this was actually a real world application I had that I used the application for, because I had this massive amount of data. It was hundreds of thousands of rows of data, um, and there was 2 sets of it, and there was, oh god, dozens of columns, and I needed to find out what the differences were, and any column could have had a difference, and I needed to know what those differences were. So, um, basically, I brought in, it was actually, uh, the data was representing to employees and with all these additional fields. So I imported both the employees, data from Excel, and I basically used this AI prompt, and I said, "Hey, on the business entity ID, that was what was common between the two. Indicate all the differences, and for the differences, I need you to create a JSON string that just says what all the differences are." And I hit the button, and again, this is running on, my local computer, not in some powerful cloud service. So instead of it taking, say, a minute or so, it took about 15 minutes. Like I said, there was hundreds of thousands of rows, and but it crunched along, and when it was done, this is what I got. Now I know it's kind of hard to see here, but basically saying for, user number one, there was a mismatch, and um, when I export this, it says job title, the original value was A, and then, um, uh, well, no, the original value was a chief executive officer, and then it says the new value is, whatever. So it actually really did the job. So that's when I was like, yes, you know what, this is actually very helpful to me. And again, I want to share with other people. So let me just quickly talk about exporting and reporting. And what I did have, oh, yes. So, yes. So for exporting, um, what happens is that you can, obviously, you can save anything as Excel files or CSV files or Parquet files, or you can just truly export it. So you can export the data to a SQL database. That's what you're kind of seeing here. Um, or you can export it to Fabric Warehouse. And basically you just choose any table or view, and you hit the export button, and you set up your connections, and boom, it pushes it out. You can also just connect to a Fabric or a SQL database and see that data and edit that data inside this application. And the reason why I did that is there was situations where I, created transformations, exported it, and then when I looked at it, it's like, oh, I want to, fix this row or something like that. So that's why I even put the ability to edit that in the application, so you don't have to jump back out to, say, another application. It even does validators, so that you can see if, you're putting a character in a numeral field before you hit save. If otherwise, if you go ahead and hit save, you'll see an arrow pop up and it'll tell you that, hey, there was a format mismatch or something. Um, so I did have a video which kind of showed exactly what I went over, but for sake of time, we're going to skip past that video. And I do want to talk about reporting. Oh, actually, first, data visualization. I stuck in Custo. So if you're familiar with Custo, it's really meant for doing graphing that's time-based. So that we shove that in there also. So if you click on the Custo, you can select any table or view. You can also use AI to help write the Custo code, and then there you go. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the Custo format. Custo was basically invented by Microsoft. It's mainly used for how they do the visualizations for Power BI, but then they open sourced it. So therefore, I shoved it in here because it's free. So that's also in there. However, I do want to talk about, with the remaining time, I want to talk about reports. Um, so when I first built that reporting engine, you saw how it had very basic rudimentary reports. And even though you can use AI to kind of, help, you know, make the reports look a little bit better, it still was not something that's really usable in, say, for example, a business setting. So what I ended up doing was I um, decided to leverage the free Microsoft Report Builder. So here's a quick video that kind of shows how that flow works. So here we're going to start off again with importing data. So I go to tables, I select, I'm going to create a new table, I choose file. In this case, I'm going to choose this employee Excel file. As you can see in the editor, you can edit it, you can then save it. So we're just going to save it as the employee table. We're going to go to reports, and we're going to use the report wizard to then select that employees table, and it's going to create a very simple rudimentary report. However, we can then save this as an RDL file, and we can go and download the free Microsoft Report Builder. We can then open up that RDL file in the report builder. And at this point, we have this product's been around for decades, and you can finally create, real reports, something that, so here's just, uh, basic fields here. But as you see, you can, move things around. You're going to add a graph, we're adding the grouping, and we're like, okay, that looks more like a real report. And at this point, you can then save it as an RDL file in the application and then re-import it back into the personal data warehouse. Or um, if you have a SQL Server reporting services server, that standard RDL file, it works there. And also, this is the format that Microsoft uses for their Power BI paginated reports. Okay, and basically, again, this is an open source uh, project, and I leveraged a lot of other open source components. For the Python, I'm I leveraged a project called PyData. So some of you are familiar with it. If you're not, it's a really great project. So it's an open source project, and it's what I was able to use to dynamically execute the Python. And what happens is that I wrote a couple of articles. So I have a site called blazerhelpwebsite.com. And what I did is I wrote two articles uh, when I was learning how to use Pyodide. Um, so here I talk about, how to use that to, dynamically execute Python code. And this again is using C sharp because I use C sharp. And then I had another one that I wrote that, um, you know, allows you to put the code in a editor here and then hit a button and then just automatically see the results. Um, so again, somebody might find this useful if you want just a quick program that allows you to, you know, have Python and write code and boom, just boom, get a result. Obviously, this code was then used in the Blazor data warehouse. Okay, and I think that's all I have. So if there's any questions, I can take any questions in the chat. Okay, thank you very much.